3 years she waited. On her wedding day to another man, the church doors burst open, and there he stood.
Subscribe to Wild Sky Stories. Turn on the bell icon so you can do not miss any new video.
The morning sun rose over the dusty town of Copper Springs, Texas, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed too beautiful for the heartache that filled Eliza Morgan's chest. She stood before the cracked mirror in her small bedroom, wearing her mother's wedding dress, the yellowed lace cascading down her slender frame like whispered promises of a life she wasn't sure she wanted. Her hands trembled as she touched the delicate fabric. Her mother had worn this dress 25 years ago, filled with joy and hope. But Eliza felt neither of those things. She felt only the heavy weight of obligation pressing down on her shoulders like stones. Outside her window, she could hear the townspeople gathering at the little white church at the end of Main Street. They were excited, whispering about the wedding of Eliza Morgan to Thomas Bradford, the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties. It was supposed to be the event of the year. Everyone said she was the luckiest woman alive. Everyone except Eliza herself. She closed her eyes and thought about how she had arrived at this moment. Her father had died 2 winters ago, leaving behind nothing but debts and a failing farm. Her younger brother Samuel was only 14 years old, too young to work the land alone. The bank had come calling, threatening to take everything their family had built over 3 generations. Then Thomas Bradford had appeared with his offer. He would pay off all the debts. He would save the farm. He would provide for Samuel's future. All Eliza had to do was become his wife. Thomas was not a cruel man. He was polite, well-mannered, and respected throughout the territory. He was 15 years older than her 22 years, with silver threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the harsh Texas sun. He had been kind to her during their brief courtship, bringing her flowers and speaking softly about the life they would build together. But Eliza did not love him, and worse, her heart already belonged to another. She opened her eyes and gazed out the window toward the distant hills, where the old Miller Ranch sat abandoned and overgrown. That was where she had first met Jacob Cole 3 summers ago, when he had ridden into town looking for work. He was a drifter, a man with nothing to his name but his horse, his worn saddle, and the guitar he played under the stars. Her father had hired him to help with the harvest, and from the moment Eliza saw his sun-weathered face and gentle green eyes, she knew her life would never be the same. Jacob was everything Thomas was not: poor, rootless, uncertain of his future. But when he looked at Eliza, she felt seen in a way she had never experienced before. When he spoke to her, his voice low and warm like honey, she felt alive. They had stolen moments together during that harvest season, walking along the creek bed when the moon was high, sitting on the fence rail while he told her stories of the places he had seen, mountains so tall they touched the clouds, rivers so wide you couldn't see the other side, cities filled with more people than she could imagine. "Come with me," he had whispered one night, his calloused hand cradling her cheek. "We could see it all together, Eliza. I don't have much, but I'd give you everything I am." She had wanted to say yes. God, how she had wanted to say yes. But her father was already growing ill, and Samuel was just a boy, and she could not abandon her responsibilities. So she had kissed Jacob goodbye as the autumn leaves fell around them, and she had watched him ride away until he was nothing but a speck on the horizon. He had promised to come back. He had promised to find work, save money, and return for her. But seasons passed, and there was no word, no letter, no sign that Jacob Cole even remembered the girl he had left behind. And now here she was, dressed in white, about to marry a man she did not love, because it was the sensible thing to do, because it would save her family, because Jacob had broken his promise. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Her best friend, Margaret, entered with a bouquet of wildflowers tied with a blue ribbon. "You look beautiful," Margaret said softly, but there was concern in her brown eyes. "Eliza, are you?" Certain about this? I've known you since we were children, and I've never seen you look so sad on a day that should bring you joy. Eliza forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm fine, just nervous. Margaret set down the flowers and took Eliza's hands in her own. It's not too late to change your mind. Thomas is a good man, but a good man would not want a wife whose heart isn't his. My heart doesn't matter, Eliza said, her voice barely above a whisper. Samuel's future matters. Keeping my father's land matters. That's all that matters now. Margaret looked like she wanted to argue, but the church bells began to ring, signaling that it was time. With a heavy sigh, she helped Eliza adjust her veil and handed her the bouquet. The walk to the church felt like walking toward her own execution. Each step brought her closer to a future she had never wanted. The townspeople smiled and waved as she passed, oblivious to the storm raging inside her chest. When she reached the church doors, her brother Samuel was waiting for her. He had grown so much in the past year, his boyish face becoming more angular, more like their father's. He was trying so hard to be strong for her, she knew, but she could see the worry in his young eyes. You don't have to do this, he whispered. I'll find a way to save the farm. I'll work harder. Hush, she said gently, squeezing his arm. This is my choice. But was it? Was it truly a choice when the alternative was watching every thing her family had built crumble to dust? The church doors opened, and the congregation turned to watch her entrance. Thomas stood at the altar in his finest suit, his expression one of barely contained satisfaction. The Reverend held his Bible open, ready to bind two lives together for all eternity. Eliza began her walk down the aisle, each step feeling heavier than the last. The faces of the townspeople blurred around her. The music swelled and faded in her ears like waves crashing on a distant shore. She was halfway to the altar when the church doors burst open behind her. Every head turned. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Eliza's heart stopped in her chest as she slowly looked over her shoulder. And there he was. Jacob Cole stood in the doorway, sunlight streaming around him like a halo. He was dustier than she remembered, his clothes worn from hard travel, his jaw shadowed with several days' worth of stubble. But his green eyes were exactly the same, deep and searching and fixed entirely on her. Eliza. He breathed her name like a prayer. Time seemed to stop. Eliza couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at the man who had haunted her dreams for 3 long years. Thomas's voice cut through the silence like a knife. What is the meaning of this interruption? Whoever you are, you're not welcome here. Jacob walked slowly down the aisle, never taking his eyes off Eliza. I'm sorry, he said, and she wasn't sure if he was speaking to her or to the whole congregation. I'm sorry I took so long. I'm sorry I didn't write. I'm sorry for everything. You need to leave, Thomas said, stepping forward, his face reddening with anger. Eliza is about to become my wife. Is that what you want? Jacob asked, ignoring Thomas entirely. He stopped just a few feet from Eliza, close enough that she could see the desperation in his eyes, the love that still burned there after all this time. Tell me it's what you want, and I'll walk away right now. I'll disappear and you'll never see me again. But I had to try. I had to come back. I made you a promise. Eliza's hands shook so violently that petals fell from her bouquet like snow. You left, she whispered, tears beginning to stream down her cheeks. You left, and you never came back.
3 years, Jacob, 3 years without a word.
Pain flickered across his weathered face. I know, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything from you, but I need you to know why. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a worn leather pouch. When he opened it, Eliza gasped. Inside was more money than she had ever seen in her life. Gold coins and paper bills that represented years of backbreaking labor. I wanted to come back with nothing to offer you but my heart, Jacob said, his voice rough with emotion. But you deserve more than that. You deserve security. You deserve someone who can take care of you and your family. He pressed the pouch into her trim. Bling hands. This is everything I've earned these past 3 years. Working cattle drives from Texas to Montana, panning for gold in California, taking every job I could find, no matter how dangerous or difficult. All of it was for you, Eliza. All of it was so I could come back and offer you the life you deserve. Jacob, she breathed, unable to find any other words. I love you, he said simply. I've loved you since the first moment I saw you standing in that field with the sunset in your hair. I loved you when I rode away, and I loved you every single day we were apart. I'll love you until they put me in the ground, and probably long after that. Thomas stepped forward, his face twisted with fury. This is absurd. Eliza, tell this drifter to leave. Tell him you're going to be my wife. But Eliza wasn't looking at Thomas. She was looking at Jacob, at the man who had crossed mountains and rivers and years of lonely nights just to keep his promise to her. The money in her hands was heavy, but it was nothing compared to the weight of the choice before her. She thought about duty. She thought about obligation. She thought about all the sensible reasons she had agreed to marry Thomas Bradford. And then she thought about love, real love, the kind that made you brave, the kind that made you foolish, the kind that burned so bright it could light up even the darkest nights. Eliza turned to face Thomas, and she saw him clearly for perhaps the first time. He was a good man, but he was not her man. He never would be. I'm sorry, Thomas, she said, her voice steady despite the tears still flowing down her cheeks. I cannot marry you. The congregation erupted in shocked whispers. Thomas's face went pale, then red, then pale again. You're making a mistake, he sputtered. You're throwing away everything. The security, the status, all of it. For a penniless drifter. Eliza shook her head slowly. I'm not throwing anything away. For the first time in years, I'm choosing something for myself. She pressed the leather pouch back into Jacob's hands. Take this. Use it to pay off my family's debts. Save the farm for Samuel. Jacob stared at her in confusion. But I saved this for us, for our future. And that's exactly what you've given me, she said, smiling through her tears. A future. One I actually want to live. I don't need gold or fine houses or the admiration of this town. I just need you, Jacob. I've only ever needed you. She pulled off her veil and let it flutter to the floor of the church like a white flag of surrender, not to Jacob, but to her own heart. Jacob's face crumpled with emotion. He gathered her in his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world, and perhaps to him, she was. I'll spend the rest of my life making you happy, he promised against her hair. Every single day, Eliza. I swear it. Thomas watched them with a mixture of anger and something that might have been reluctant admiration. He was a proud man, but he was not without honor. He could see now what he had refused to see before, that Eliza's heart had never been his to claim. Go, he said quietly, before I change my mind about being gracious. Eliza looked back at him with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Thomas. I hope you find someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. Then she took Jacob's hand, and together they walked back down the aisle, not toward the altar but toward the door, toward the sunlight, toward freedom. Samuel was waiting for them outside, his young face split into a wide grin. I knew it, he said. I knew you couldn't go through with it. Eliza laughed, a real laugh, full of joy and relief. You knew nothing of the sort. I knew you talked in your sleep, Samuel replied with a mischievous wink. And the name you said wasn't Thomas. Jacob squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with love and wonder and the promise of all the adventures that lay ahead. Where do you want to go, Eliza? I'll take you anywhere. The mountains, the ocean, the stars themselves, if I could reach them. Eliza looked out at the wide Texas sky, at the land she had called home her entire life. She thought about all the places Jacob had described during those magical nights by the creek. the wonders of a world she had never seen. "Home," she said softly. "Take me home first. I want to stand in my mother's kitchen one more time. I want to say goodbye to the fields where I grew up. And then," she turned to face him, her heart full to bursting. "Then I want to see everything. I want to see mountains and rivers and cities. I want to see the whole world with you, Jacob Cole." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." They walked away from the church together, leaving behind the whispers and the scandal and all the expectations that had nearly suffocated her. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Eliza wasn't afraid, because she wasn't walking it alone. Later that evening, as the sun set over the hills and painted the sky in the same colors as that fateful morning, Eliza stood on the porch of her family's farmhouse. Jacob sat on the steps, playing his guitar and singing a soft melody about love found and lost and found again. Samuel had already forgiven the disruption to his life's plans. In fact, he seemed almost relieved. The money Jacob had given them would save the farm, and Samuel was old enough now to run it with the help of the neighbors who had always been kind to them. Eliza sat down beside Jacob, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Were you really going to walk away if I had told you to?" Jacob stopped playing and looked at her with those green eyes that still made her heart skip a beat. "Yes," he admitted. "It would have destroyed me, but yes. Your happiness matters more than mine, Eliza. It always has." She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Then it's a good thing my happiness and yours happen to be the same thing." The stars began to appear one by one, filling the Texas sky with light. And somewhere between the music and the whispered promises and the gentle touch of the man she loved, Eliza Morgan knew that refusing to marry Thomas Bradford wasn't the moment she had lost everything. It was the moment she had finally found it,